Hey, how's it going? It's Jessey here of the Wholesaling Secrets podcast. I've got a very young guest with me here today. His name is Ethan Brown. He's going to share with you recently, some of the challenges that he went through as a wholesaler, what he's sort of using wholesaling for in terms of his long-term goals and really how he kind of hung on to make this business work. I'm sure a lot of you are going to be able to relate to some of the challenges that he's gone through, and he's going to share some of the tactical things that he does as well on this episode. Anyways, enjoy this episode here with Ethan Brown. All right, we got our guest here, Ethan Brown. Ethan, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Hey, thanks for coming on the show. Let's start off with your journey. How did you get started, and how did you get into real estate investing, first of all?
Yeah. So I'm sure as many others during that kind of whole COVID area, that's where I discovered wholesaling, real estate investing, all that good stuff. I actually started out more so looking into stocks and everything, just kind of on my own, stumbling upon it and getting really into that. And then after a while, I was like, this isn't the best. I don't think it's something you can really control, right? So from there, I just honestly started looking up some books that could help me build wealth. I started seeing things like real estate investing pop up. I did read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but that's not really the one that got me into real estate. It was a couple Bigger Pockets books, some by Brandon Turner, Josh Dorkin, I think it is as well. They wrote one together. So just read those, dove into it like late 2020, early 2021. And from there, I took a long time to, I guess, get through that learning curve of figuring everything out. I thought I could just go buy rental properties. Didn't quite work out, and eventually stumbled upon wholesaling. Long story short.
So you decided to try some buy and hold, some rental properties first.
Yep.
Was it that passive income that sort of drew you to it? You thought it was easier, and what didn't work about it?
Yep. So for anybody who got started on Bigger Pockets, I'm sure they know where I'm coming from, but the focus is really rental properties, right? It's not really flipping, not wholesaling, nothing like that. So that's where I was learning from. And to be honest, that's what I was after too. It's stuff like passive income where you can really control your time in a sense, and it's still a business. You're still making money, right? And the learning curve I really went through is figuring out that it's not that easy to find deals, right? You can't just go on the MLS and find them, especially in the 2021 market. So I understood the numbers and everything. I was always analyzing deals and looking for rentals, and they're still attractive to me. I still want to buy rental properties. But after a while, it got exhausting. I was thinking, it's been a long time. I haven't done any deals. I haven't made progress, right? Because I'm kind of just looking for properties, talking to agents and stuff and looking for rentals, but it's not just going to fall on my lap. So then I transitioned into wholesaling because I said, I got to take action. I got to get out there, find some deals, at least get active income and build a business that I can then use to buy rentals. And from there, I basically just went all out into wholesaling and fell in love with it. And the goal still later on is to buy rentals for sure, though.
Okay. So the end goal is to buy and hold.
Yes, sir.
And so when you transitioned into wholesaling, what did that exactly mean? I mean, you're talking to people, you're talking to agents about rental properties. What is that like on a day-to-day basis? Like if you had to kind of like, okay, it's 3 months later, you're getting into wholesaling. What did it look like at that point?
Yep. So when I first started, I just got a Google Voice number and started making some calls. It was crazy nerve-wracking. It felt very difficult. Luckily, I had some great people in my network from meetups I went to, a great mentor, I'm Night Casey, and basically just some properties I knew that were distressed, like one a couple streets over. I just tried cold calling them, getting a hold of them, and it took a while to get a deal. I think it was probably 6 months. Eventually I hit another point where I got frustrated. I was tired of hand dialing and just feeling like I wasn't doing things right. I was just learning from YouTube. So I got a dialer. I believe I was using Batch Dialer at the time, and just plugged in a high equity list and, pretty much right away found that seller I did my first deal with and just did whatever I could to get out there and make something happen.
Yeah. 6 months. I mean,
It's
that's
a
a
long
no
time.
joke timeline, and I hope that sinks in with some of those that are listening. That, I mean, it wasn't just 6 months of real estate. I mean, you were looking for rentals prior to that.
Yeah,
You were doing reading prior to that. There
it
was a
was a
lot
long
of
time.
upfront work or time that seems like it just goes into nothing. Is that right? Is that how you felt?
Exactly. Exactly. And that's too why the why behind what you're doing is so important. And that's something I want to touch on too a little bit later, but kind of having that why and keeping those things in mind and kind of staying in line with your reasoning and everything is so important, right? In this industry and especially wholesaling, right? For me at least, that's where my experience is. Because if not, that's where people drop out. That's where they fail. That's where I probably would have left. When you get into it, you get tired. It's hard. You forget why you're doing it. And you say, why don't I just go get a job? Right? Why don't I just go get a normal job and make money instead of spend money and not really make anything? Right. And it took a long time. And I mean, after doing that deal in 6 months, I had some stuff that fell through, but it took another 6 months of hard work, really going at it, using the dialer, staying on the phone. And then I got a deal, and that took 9 months to close. It was wild, a crazy deal. And from there, from that point in time, so 6 months after the 6 months when I got a deal, it was probably 6 months later to where I got two deals at that point, right? And throughout this time, of course, I'm very frustrated, right? And I was still in school at the time. So in between there was summer. Of course, I just really dove into wholesaling, did everything I could, put in a lot of time on the dialer, and things just, they weren't happening. They weren't going the way they should. And I knew I could do more, right? So at that point in time, I ended up joining Brent Daniels Community, TTP. And that was definitely helpful, having that network and whatnot, having Brent there. And I'm sure everybody listening, you can see a pattern here. But again, I got frustrated, right? I got tired. I was saying, why is this not working? What am I doing? So I gave up cold calling, dropped it, went over to SMS. I didn't have much of a budget at this point, right? I wasn't closing deals. And I said, this is it. I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to run through a bunch of data and see what I can do here. And that's when I really picked up, right? I got a $20,000 deal, $28,000 deal, $30,000. And that's where things kind of started to get moving, right? So for anybody listening, listening to my story and wondering why I'm kind of running through this, it's going to take a while. There's definitely struggles. There's things that take time. There's things you need to experiment with, but it's certainly worth it. And anybody can do it, right? I'm a young guy out here doing this. So just wanted to run through that and give everybody some background.
Looking back at it right now, this is going to be challenging because you're in a totally different place now.
Yeah.
But if you were to fast track those 12, 18 months, what would you have done a little bit differently? That doesn't mean super drastic here. I want people to know, though, Ethan, you're young. You're in school at that time.
Yep.
And it serves as a advantage, maybe disadvantage, I don't know, but you're filling up your day. You've got school, you're learning, you're also focused on other things as well. That could have played into your timeline. I'm not sure. But, if you were to go back, how would you have, let's just use the word, fast tracked. How would you fast track
Yep.
that?
Yep. I've definitely thought about this before. I would say there's a couple things, right? One, I would say is joining a community or at least getting in a better network of people doing exactly what I'm doing, which is wholesaling, a lot earlier, right? I would have learned a lot quicker. Little questions I had to learn on my own through experience would have been solved just like that in a day, a second, right? So that's one thing. It's going to save people a lot of time, a lot of frustration. I would say the other is to not really be scared of failure, but rather try to fail fast as I can, right? That's why I started hand dialing and doing this and that and slowly progressing through these movements and doing things like waiting to join the Rhino Tribe, Brent Daniels Community, until a year and a half later, right? Because I was scared of putting money in or putting too much money in and not getting it back. Right. The problem isn't that I didn't have some sort of budget to go get a dialer or run SMS or do whatever I needed to do. The problem is that I was worried about it, right? And that really delayed things. I've thought quite often, this, when I started, was at a time when batch leads, I think texting, you could add it on for like $50 a month, right? Of course, it's not the case now with things. But what I could have done with that $50 a month would have put me at a minimum a year or two ahead, right? So I would really say not being worried about failing and just trying to get to that point quickly as you can, not being too risk adverse, and just finding people you can learn from, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Let's talk a little bit more tactical here. And I do want to swing back to why, and I want to talk a little bit about your superpowers, but let's talk a little bit of tactical here. You know, you went from cold calling, hand dialing here, and you went to texting. What did texting look like for you? And does texting is texting still part of what you do?
Yep. So texting, the not past few months, earlier on this year, late last year, I had some issues with it, some things I had to figure out. You know, I'm still learning just like everyone else. But texting looked exactly the same as cold calling in terms of the time I needed to put in. The difference was basically just how I was marketing, right? Because I would send a ton of text out and I need to make sure if someone responded, yes, or maybe, or they gave me a price, 100 grand or, 75 grand more than what their estimate showed online, I need to be on the phone right away, right? So that's really the only difference, because you're not already on the phone with them. And a lot of times people aren't going to pick up. So there's kind of that follow-up game with anybody who shows any interest. So, I mean, that's really the only difference there, but it provided me with a lot more leads. The reason I like texting is because it's almost like a cheap version of direct mail, right? People have these text messages sitting in their phone. I've had people reach out to me months later after, months of follow-up messages and whatnot through the automations. And they said, hey, what can you offer me for my house here? I'm ready to sell it. And I was shocked. I never heard back from them or anything. With cold calling, that's not something that you're really going to get. Maybe if you leave voicemails, but probably not. So that's one thing I really like. That yes, text message, that still works. I still use the same platform I started with, and I also use Launch Control as well. I moved into the Dallas-Fort Worth market. I know people say it's really competitive, but I'm already doing SMS deals there. So it certainly works. You just got to be on top of those leads, and you got to be really good about your follow-up, right? And just stay on top of it. And that's really what's going to get anybody a deal, whether it's cold calling, text, mail, pay-per-click, whatever it may be.
Okay, let's talk about follow-up. Let's break it down here. And I think that's something that, you've been emphasizing a lot about.
Definitely.
Okay, so are you talking about a cold outreach follow-up, or are you talking about a follow-up with a lead who has gotten back to you? First of all, I want to make sure we're clear on the terms there.
Yep. So with texting specifically, and I'm sure mailers and everything as well, but with texting, what I'm doing, it's important for the cold follow-up as well, right? We don't just want to send one text and forget about the person. So I might send a text today. I might send one tomorrow and say, hey, I didn't hear back. Just wanted to see, is there any interest in selling that property, right? And then, basically every 30 days or so, I might have it follow up with people for a while until I just don't get responses and whatnot, right? Maybe they'll come back into the system at another time. But that's definitely, or go ahead.
And so how many texts is an owner going to receive from you?
Yeah, as of right now, I'm probably sending, I'd say 3 to 4 follow-up texts after the initial one. Somewhere in that range. It does vary. But a lot of times at that point, the person probably isn't going to respond. And of course, you can still get deals from continuing to do that. But I want to make sure I'm making use of the money I'm spending and time I'm committing, right? So I've definitely got deals from that third text, that fourth text, right? And one of the people who called me back 6 months later asking, what I can offer for their home, I believe they got 4 or 5 text messages from me, right? And I never heard back. So it kind of shows the power of follow-up in that sense. But back to your initial question, the follow-up with sellers, people you've already sort of qualified, they're a lead, they're in your CRM, whatever you're using to keep track of sellers. that's where the bread and butter is at, right? And when I didn't have a true mentor for wholesaling, when I was brand new and wasn't getting into those wholesaling communities, I would watch YouTube and stuff. I heard people like, I think it might have been Pace Morby talking about how the money's in follow up. Well, I thought they meant follow up as in cold follow up. It took me a long time to learn they meant with people who are already leads. And I had to learn through experience, which is why it took me so long to get traction. That's where all the money is really at with wholesaling. It's pretty rare that you're going to call someone and they're just ready to go. A lot of times they say they are, but you got to uncover those objections and those things they still got to do before they're ready to sign an agreement. So yeah, follow up is the bread and butter to a wholesaler or any real estate investor, and that's how you beat people out on deals for sure.
Yeah, I like to get those terms always sorted out. I think there's sometimes, you've got the cold follow-up, which
Yep.
I consider as just cold outreach,
Exactly.
remarketing or
Yep.
cold outreach, and then you have follow-up with leads that have gone back to you. So I'm glad we got that cleared up. Okay, great. So are you, you're doing texting, and now you're sort of in a new market as well as you were explaining. Can you share with us? I mean, you've been successful. You're in a new market now. What are there any challenges and anything that you're experimenting with right now that you can sort of give us a peek under the sheets here for us?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it really is. Challenges are always going to be unique to, specific people. Sometimes we share them, but it depends on our situation, right? So for me, I'm still sorting SMS out, getting adjusted to a few things. I just entered, my market, the Dallas Fort Worth market, I'd say maybe 3 months ago or something, right? I already have a number of deals locked up through texting though. So I'm figuring that out. I'm making sure I'm getting my ROI and whatnot straight. I'd say moving into a new market, a struggle is, having those buyers on hand and whatnot, knowing the area, having that common knowledge. And I don't live anywhere near Dallas, Fort Worth, right? So I don't know anything about the place. But for everyone listening, that doesn't mean you can't do business somewhere you don't know. I haven't really done any business anywhere I do know. I haven't done business in my backyard. So that's a struggle, but you just have to find the right people, right? You have to find the right people who can help you sell your deals or, find the right buyers, find the right agents or whoever it's going to be, title company that can fill you in on that market knowledge. And yeah, I mean, that's about it. I'm testing out pay per lead as well as another lead generation method. So it's going well so far. And that's something that's taught me the power of follow up. That was a struggle, is sort of almost being late on deals or just getting left behind, not being able to get in touch with sellers. And that really led me to find out how important follow up really is and whatnot.
How are you going about finding the right buyers? You're new to this new market here. What are you doing? Like, are you going on Facebook? Are you going to, I don't know, meetups? Well, you're far away from there. So,
Yep.
what are you doing to find the buyers?
So in my previous market, it was only a couple hours from where I live, and I would go on Facebook, right? It's a hot market. It's nowhere near as big as Dallas Fort Worth. So it was very easy to dispo deals and get some great assignment fees, right? Now, this has been a big change going to a different market because Facebook is pretty much dead in terms of finding buyers. I put a number of posts out there and, I found some, found a specific group where I can find buyers. You have to get creative and keep searching and whatnot. It works. But it's just not as powerful, right? So I actually started just texting buyers, trying to figure out who's buying, who wants to be on my list, figure their criteria out, make sure I'm connecting, learning what they're looking for, and kind of stacking up my list. And I'm kind of in the mindset of, I know it's a big question I guess people have when they're getting started is, do I find buyers first or do I find deals first? I'm in the mindset of just go take action, right? So I started doing both. I got a deal before I had buyers. I'm still getting deals before I have enough buyers to really be moving in this market. So I have people that help me dispo the deals as well in that market.
Gotcha. So, Ethan, why the new market? I mean, is it a new challenge? You're looking for bigger opportunities. What are you expecting out of this?
Yep. So there's a few things. I was testing out a couple different markets, and Dallas is the one I've landed on. I was really looking for a large area because my previous market was probably a total of 1 million people, which is plenty to do a lot of business, right? But Dallas, I believe it's north of 7 million, right? That whole area. So that's one thing because as I grow my business and as I really hit my goals in the future and grow to that, size I want to be, then I want to make sure there's going to be plenty of motivated sellers. I want to make sure those niche lists are going to have plenty of sellers on them and not just a couple people I can reach out to, right? So that's one thing that drove that decision. Another, which really wasn't an issue with my previous market, but I just wanted the kind of median price point that I was seeing in Dallas, right? Because it's a lot easier to get larger assignment fees. If you have a $400,000 house, it's a lot easier to make 20 grand than a house that's going to be worth 100 grand fixed up. It needs a full rehab, right? And then in addition to that, I'm not saying you can't do deals in a tough market or a market that doesn't have much inventory, but my market has like a month of inventory or something, whereas Dallas, I believe, is 3.5 or so last time I checked, right? So there's a big difference there. And I've certainly noticed these things, right? Instead of having a code violation list and texting, say, 300 people, for example, in my market, in Dallas, it may have been, 4 times that size, 5 times, 6 times. So there were a lot more people I could, reach out to who weren't cutting their grass or had dilapidated properties. And that's actually where my one of my current deals is from right now, is a code violation list.
All right, so you know that Ethan is also texting and he's exploring other different marketing channels. And from texting, you need to sort of manage those deals, manage the properties itself, and flow them into somewhere. And this is why we have a platform called Pebble. It's really going to centralize all your communication, all your marketing, but keep track of every single property you're marketing to, whether or not they're an actual deal or a lead or just somebody that still owns the property. This is what sets us apart from any other CRM out there, that we're a database system to contain all the properties that you're ever going to market to, and you can pull up those property records and see what you've done. In terms of marketing and remarketing, follow-up is a big thing for someone like Ethan, and it makes it so easy for you to remarket the same owner multiple times. So anyways, if you want to learn more about Pebble, how to market, how to remarket, how to track all of that and keep things actually simple so you actually use the system, head over to pebblerei.com today and book a demo with us. Anyways, enjoy the rest of this episode here with Ethan. As you're, well, I do want to talk about your why, but before that, walk us through, something specifically, maybe at one of your deals, that was just really messy, or challenging. Is there anything that comes to mind? Because I think a lot of people think, oh, okay, hey, I'll step into this. It's easy peasy type of thing. But, give us some, something tangible here that we can understand the pain, where you do need to sort of come back to your why, where it was really painful. I don't know if you have a moment like that, but is there something that comes to mind to you, Ethan?
Oh, certainly. There's a number of them. There's actually one that is hopefully closing at this moment. that was sort of messy, but I actually want to go back in time to last year in about October 2024 or September 2024. I locked up a deal. It was pretty easy to lock up. The seller just wanted to get out of the home for some personal reasons. I was able to help. I was able to, kind of stretch my numbers a little bit, get that price she wanted. And she wanted to close in 3 weeks, right? So a little bit faster than people typically close in. So I said, all right, let's do it. I'm here to help. Got on the phone with her and her friend at like 10 p.m. at night, signed an agreement so I could make sure we just got the ball rolling for them. So it seemed easy, seemed like things were going to go smooth. I pretty quickly assigned it to one of my buyers for, I think it was 20 grand even. All right. So it looked like a great deal as well. Moving forward, when title came back and had, I think it was just like judgment paperwork or something, just signing, her name off and saying, hey, this isn't me. So there were no judgments. Then all of a sudden there were a lot of problems. She wasn't wanting to sign paperwork. She wasn't wanting to move forward, even though she still wanted to sell the place. So I won't, go down a rabbit hole here. But there was a lot of fear she had around closing, around, signing her name on papers and whatnot, and many, many other issues that came up along with her having signed with another company, right? And that proved to be a large issue as well. But many, many, many hours on the phone overcame all of this. And I spent many evenings on the phone with title, with the seller, even with the other company she signed with. And it wasn't until March of 2025 that this was finally able to get closed. And a little bit before that, my buyer had to back out because the market had changed. Things changed, the comps changed. So then I had to dispo it again, and the assignment fee got cut in half, essentially, right? So that's really tough. On a podcast, it doesn't seem like that much. You're just hearing these words, but think about, I don't know how many months that was of just, reaching out, trying to solve these problems that really aren't big problems. They're easy to solve, solving them, and then having another objection come and smack you in the face, right? A lot of people probably would have dropped the deal, right? I didn't. I wanted to get it done. She still wanted to move. She wasn't opposed to selling the place or anything. So I made sure I did what I said I was going to do, okay? But things can be difficult, right? Those deals are going to come up, and there's also going to be deals that you sign an agreement, stay in touch with the seller, and, things close. It's smooth and easy. So there's going to be both, but it's not all perfect, right?
Yeah. Okay, let's circle back to your whys. Why do you continue to do? Why did you go through the adversity you went through? Especially the first, I don't know, more than a year.
Sure.
What is it that you're hoping to get out of this? And I'll let you explain to us your why.
Sure. So I'd say my whys are pretty almost basic in a sense, right? Very in line with what I hear other people say their whys are. But number one, I would say is just to have control of my time, right? I want to be able to turn this into a business, invest in rental properties. Who knows? Maybe even from here, get into other businesses, right? Wherever this path goes. But I want to be able to have control of my income, control of my time. So, if I need to be there for my family, I can be there. Or if I just want to, be there for when I have kids one day, be able to actually participate in their life, right? You can do those sort of things, right? I don't want to not really be able to be present in my own life or my kids' life, my family's life, that sort of thing there, right? Another one, and a lot of this, I'm sure people have heard on Bigger Pockets, right? It's a lot of things you hear from people like Brandon Turner, but I want to be able to have that income, have that stability, especially when it comes to rental properties, for if anything happens to me, right? Or anything happens to my family, I have this income that can make sure we're all set, we're good, and I can take care of us, right? And then as well, I would say not so much before getting into wholesaling and just real estate in general was I too passionate about business and whatnot. I always envisioned myself doing something in that world, but it's really become a passion as well, just to build my own thing and really create something. Right. So there's a passion that, has really struck a chord with me and I've just really enjoyed it, even if it's been frustrating, it's been difficult at times, and it's just the path I really want to go on.
Yeah. Keeping in mind of your whys, that can definitely be a challenging one. You get bogged down by the day to day, and sometimes you even end up questioning your whys. So
Yep.
I'm curious here, you mentioned family a few times. You're quite young. When you're referring to family, you did mention about kids in the future. Ethan, if you don't mind letting us know, how old are you?
Yeah. So I'm 21. I'll be 22 soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
So
or go ahead. I'm sorry.
when you're talking about your family, is that your own family or your parents and your
Yep.
siblings, or are you talking about a future family?
Yep. Really, really both, right? I'm a very future minded person. which is probably why I'm doing this at a young age, right? Because I'm looking forward to the future and would rather sacrifice time now, right? And have more joy and freedom in the future. But yeah, I'm thinking of, grandparents, parents, even friends, a girlfriend, all that sort of stuff, future, kids, for example, right? So really just the family everybody has, around them, right?
Yeah, no. Again, I just noticed you mentioned that, and it's great to great to hear that that's a driving reason of who you want to take care of as well. So, okay, I'm going to start wrapping it up here, but can you? You've been in this for now, I would say 5 years. So you started this in your teens, is that right?
I got into real estate when I was 17. Yeah, I
Yeah.
started,
Okay.
that's when I started kind of looking into rentals and whatnot.
Yeah. Can you sort of get for young people who are listening, or for parents who want to maybe give some guidance for kids who are, I don't want
Yeah.
to say kids, but younger generation here that want to get into real estate investing. And I've had another person on the show before, like they were too young to sign for anything. I'm sure you sort of came across those kind of issues, but what are some things that somebody who's young, who's preoccupied in school, but does want to move forward with building a business, with building something that you've built, what should they keep in mind, and what are some of the pitfalls to look out for as a young person?
Yeah, I mean, especially for those in school. I mean, well, actually, really, those working, anybody, right? Work probably takes up more time than school. You really just gotta make sure you prioritize it. Make time. It doesn't have to be too much, but you gotta take those actions that are necessary, right? And we all want to use creative avoidance and whatnot. It's easy to do, especially if we're young. Maybe we haven't talk to too many people in a professional manner, or talk to adults or gotten yelled at by them, right? But you just got to kind of put your whys and where you want to go in front of your fears and just get out there and take action, right? Regardless of what it means. Maybe it's just picking up the phone and calling someone. Maybe it's going to a real estate meetup and trying to find a mentor, trying to look for buyers, whatever it may be, right? Just that sort of stuff there. I would say as a young person, you're at an advantage though. You're getting started in this industry early. You're gonna get through that learning curve early on in your life, right? I'd say it's never ending, but the steep learning curve to really do deals, you're gonna get through that pretty quickly. You just got to stick with it. You got to have the discipline to stick with it, and really, I don't think it matters if you're young or not, right? The same rules, the same concepts apply to everybody.
Curious, and I do believe there's so many advantages to being young and starting early. But there's also this sort of, I don't know if this is true for you, but when you're young, did you did you did you get less support in the sense that, okay, hey, you're a young kid, you're just playing around, or it's almost like nobody really takes you seriously. And I wonder, do you have that self-talk as well? You don't take yourself as seriously. I'm a young, I'm
Yep.
17,
Yep.
like that doesn't hold you as accountable. You don't have the support you might have as an adult. Where you might have a spouse who's going to believe in you, and
Yep.
you've gone through some work experience and whatnot. It's a different climate for you.
Yeah. No, it certainly is. And I'm glad you asked that. I was actually thinking a little bit about this the other day. So when you're really young, like I was still in high school when I started learning about rentals and stuff, and didn't get into wholesaling until I graduated, right? But you're still so young. You haven't gotten out into the professional world really. You haven't done things like this. And I fortunately, have very supportive parents, and they were, helping me along the way, learning with me, wanting to get into real estate. They have invested in some real estate as well. So it's difficult if you don't have that family support, for sure. But I would really say it's more that self-talk, right? That is going to mess with you more than anything. And like you said, if you don't have support around you, then you're really going to have negative self-talk. So you always have to be, lifting yourself up, seeing what you're going to do, envisioning it, feeling it, letting yourself know, hey, I can do this. It doesn't matter if I'm young, because I would have those thoughts, maybe not directly, but it's almost a feeling like, hey, I'm 18, I'm 19, I'm 20, whatever age you are, these people can't take me seriously. I can't, close sellers on the phone. I'm only this age, right? I'm not a professional. So it's that kind of talk that will stop you, right? You could have a deal where you could make 20, 30 grand on it, and you could turn it into either no deal or a deal where you might make 5 grand because you don't believe in yourself, right? So you are right in that stance. It's being young. I think there's a lot of self-doubt that can naturally occur. And that goes for anybody at any age as well, but especially being young, for some reason, I guess as a society, we just feel like young people can't do big things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's certainly changing now. We've got people
Certainly.
like you, and there's a there's a lot of young people now. But anyways, Ethan, thank you so much for coming on. I want you to leave one more thing here for the listeners. If somebody's on the fence, they're marginally getting started here. Specifically, if there's one thing they can do to really move the needle here, in your eyes, what should they be doing?
Yep. Can I give you 2 things? One for that, and one that I think would just help a lot of people out there in the audience that has helped me. So for anybody getting started, maybe they're on the fence, maybe they're starting out but they're struggling. I would say it really just comes down to taking that imperfect action, just getting out there and doing what you at your core know you need to do. Maybe you can go and mess around and do some work that isn't really important or going to get you deals because it feels productive and you're a bit scared, you're a bit nervous to go get things done. But at your core, that getting on the phones or starting with SMS or going out there and door knocking a pre-foreclosure list, that stuff is going to get you deals, right? So I would say really focus on that. Focus on your income generating task. Surround yourself with people who are doing a lot of business, learn from them. And, you may still progress pretty slowly as I did in the past. Not everybody's on the same track, but just remember your why, keep doing what you're doing, and just stay determined. You'll get there, right? The other thing I wanted to mention is something I do each morning, each day that has really helped me out, especially in the recent past where things have been really tough and it's hard to stay motivated. It's hard to keep doing what you're doing, right? So I'd say overall, it comes down to your mindset, right? It's very easy to be negative. It's very easy to kind of fall out of that flow we get into when we're doing deals, we're doing well, things feel great, right? So I'm constantly now envisioning what I want, what I want my goals to be. In the recent past, I was starting with pay per lead. I was struggling with SMS, and I eventually started, every morning, every night, just visualizing me getting an SMS lead and getting a pay per lead deal and taking them to closing, following up with them relentlessly, because that's what it often takes to, get the deal over the other 5 companies out there. So really just seeing it, visualizing it, your brain starts to think it's true, right? And using affirmations, right? Saying, I'm going to do, SMS deals. I'm going to do pay per lead deals. I'm going to make this much money this year by helping people out in this business, right? So those sort of things, and having that routine that you do every day, it's essentially the Miracle Morning. If anybody hasn't read that book, please go read it. It works. It's very helpful. But following that, it really keeps you on track. It tricks your brain into believing these things are true. And, as a result, feeling that energy, going out there and doing what you need to do and just bringing it to life. So that's something, especially in the recent past, like I said, that has proven to be very helpful, very true for me. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. Please do that. Read The Miracle Morning, read books like that, apply it to your life, get that routine, and it's really going to help you out more than anything else, to be honest.
Awesome. Ethan, thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom and your experience and being candid about things, even as of recent. So we're wishing you the best of luck. Ethan, thanks for coming on the show.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for having me. It's great speaking with you.
All right, take care. Cheers.
Take care.